I'm Allison, and this is Dream Anyway, a podcast for those of us who feel the pull to create, even when the path isn't clear. So wherever you are in your journey, grab a coffee, get comfy, and dream anyway.
It's great to be here. My name is Tammy Rose, and I have a career that I've had for 23 years, but aside from that, I'm a model, and I have social media presence. I'm a content creator, and I'm known as Mother Wolf online. And I just started modeling and doing permanent makeup, tooth gems. Yeah, I kind of just a few years ago decided to throw everything against the wall and try all of the things that I never did when I was raising my children. And here I am having a blast doing all those things.
How many kids do you have?
5 and 1 grandson.
I'm the youngest of 6, so I know what a lot of kids feels like.
Yeah. I actually raised more than that. I also raised 4 stepchildren. So we had a house that had a lot of people in it for a very long time.
Oh, wow. And you just started modeling how long ago?
Just this year.
Oh, just this year. And do you mind me asking how old you are?
I'm 52.
Okay, awesome. You were one thing for a very long time. And then recently you decided to unveil who you think you really are. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes and no. So I still have my career and I'm still doing that, but I'm not passionate about it. Right before my 50th birthday, it dawned on me that I wasn't really doing anything in my life that I was passionate about. My youngest had just left the house and life was kind of mundane. And I looked in the mirror and I had no idea who I was even looking at. Mm-hmm. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching and self-discovery. And I decided I was going to do the things that I wanted to do my entire life that I put on the back burner so I could raise a family. And I started doing those things and exploring different things. And what I discovered is I was actually kind of reverting back to my teen self. Mm-hmm. You know, I changed my hair, my outer image, and even the things I did as pastimes and hobbies, like going to raves and shows and hanging out with my friends. And I didn't do that for so long. And so I kind of just went back to who I was before.
Yeah.
And like I said, I still have my career, but I didn't want to be stuck. I didn't want to feel like I didn't have options. So I started exploring other things. And part of discovering who I was, I always wanted freckles. So I went out and I got my freckles tattooed on. Cool. And then I discovered in the process, because it took me a really long time to find somebody who would do that. I thought, well, what if I offer that? So I got certified in doing tattoo freckles, amongst other things. And then I also love tooth gems. And I was kind of tired of looking all over or waiting for my friend from California to come up. So that motivated me to do that and become certified in tooth gems. And, you know, all of the little things I changed about myself are things that you'll find in the content that I create. Mm-hmm. And while I was discovering who I was, that was when I realized, dang it, you know, I spent 30 years being somebody I wasn't because I thought I had to sacrifice who I truly was to be a good mother and a good partner. And I don't think any of those things are true. I think I actually did the opposite in stifling who I was. And I think I kept the world from benefiting from my gifts and I kept myself from growing the way I should have. But, you know, it's never too late. Here I'm 52 and just starting modeling.
I just so love and resonate with that message so much. I'm so glad that you're saying all that. We're supposed to light up the world with who we are, not who we think we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Like when somebody says, you know, what should I wear to a photo shoot? I'm just like, what do you want to wear to a photo shoot? I can't tell you who you are. You know who you are. I hope people know who they are.
Well, I didn't. You know, over the last 2 years as I've been evolving and doing this self-discovery and growing my following by leaps and bounds and meeting so many other people, I am discovering that there are so many people just like me. They're worried about judgment. They're worried about stereotypes, right? And having the world think that you can't be a good mother and a good parent and still be your authentic true self.
Right.
You know, you have to pretend you're whatever the box is that your culture is telling you, you need being to be in. And I was in that for a really long time. And part of that for me was a religious box that I chose to participate in. And another one was a political box that I participated in. And again, once I started soul searching and doing the things that brought me happiness, I realized those things weren't even a part of who I was.
Oh, yeah.
It was so liberating to be able to shed that heaviness that my partners or my friends or my community's values were putting on me, or that I allowed to accept as my own, when in reality, that wasn't who I was at all.
Right. I really love that. I had a dark room in high school and I loved photography. I always had a camera with me. And after college, I went to a photo studio in Miami to apprentice, even though I had a degree in design. And I was so intimidated by lighting that I decided I wasn't smart enough. And for 30 years, the same thing right before I turned 52 is when I started photography again. I let 30 years go by just the same as you. Isn't that so astounding?
It's shocking, but I think it's really common. And I think so many people don't have the courage to pick up where they left off.
And so do you think you're courageous? Because I don't think that about myself. I just think, I don't know if courage is the word.
Oh my gosh, you are so brave. When I read your testament online and I see what you're doing and all of these ventures you're taking on, that is, I think definitely you're so courageous for doing that and so brave. It feels to me like you don't have any fear whatsoever.
Well, that is why the name of the podcast is Dream Anyway, because what do we have but just step into it? I know you have a long history of things that have happened to you, but what else is there than living your life fully and being who you are and who you're meant to be?
I agree. If you don't take that risk, then you don't know what good things you're missing out on.
What do your kids think about the new mom?
They all have different opinions. And one of my children is, I think, probably my biggest supporter. And another one of my children is probably my biggest hater, if we're being really honest about it. I'm a completely different person. Physically, I look different. You know, I changed everything about me, my hair. I mean, the pandemic did a lot of good for some people, right? And for me, it definitely did. But on the inside, I'm changing even more. And I can recall a conversation about 2 years ago when I was really knee deep in this self-discovery journey, where one of my children was like, I don't even know who you are anymore. And I said, that's okay, because you'll get to know the new me, just like I'm getting to know the new me. So that's been a struggle. I don't know if fearful is the word, but I was a little concerned that they wouldn't accept the fact that I am unapologetically being myself, which again comes with some stereotype, right? And some judgment. But at the end of the day, if I'm happy and I'm being my true authentic self, then I am modeling for my children exactly what I hope that someday they will see, recognize, and do for themselves, even if they're not in a place right now to accept what I'm doing as the right thing for whatever reason, maybe because, like I said, it's unknown to them. That's okay, because in the end, it's really what's best.
I love that so much. And also having faced a cancer diagnosis, or facing, I guess, because it's incurable, but I have 2 lovely daughters and a husband that I just adore. But ultimately, I feel like alone. I mean, I have to live for me. I have to make choices for me. I love everybody, but it's my life and my choices and my ultimate death. And your kids are an incentive, but they can't be the whole reason.
I think that we are given this life to figure out what our gifts are and what our purpose is. And I do think that we will touch many lives on our journey, right on this path. But I don't think they are the reason we're here. It's so much bigger than that. For me personally, I think it's more about us and our growth and our development, and for us to learn these lessons. And while we're learning them, they're watching.
Right.
So they're gleaning the benefit of that as well. But when we make them the focal point, we lose ourselves. And that's not fair to anybody. Even before, my 50-year birthday, transformation, I was constantly dissatisfied. And I think that comes from a childhood of, brokenness and poverty. I've never been content. I'm just extremely driven. So if things weren't exactly how I wanted them, I would change them and I would do whatever it took, and my children, they watched me go to college and get a degree in design and fine art. And then several years later, go back because I needed to support them. And I wasn't doing that financially with that art degree. I went back for accounting. And that was even harder the second time with all these littles, in preschool and school and going to work in the day and then picking them up and taking them to another daycare at the college so I can get those classes in. But for me, I would expect that I'm on my deathbed when I quit learning and quit growing and quit trying to seek betterment.
That's so good. What advice would you have for somebody who feels stuck and knows that there's more? How do you take the first step, do you think?
Investing in yourself. When you treat yourself like you would treat your partner or your children or your coworkers or your neighbor, when you start treating yourself with that regard and investing in yourself, I think everything else becomes natural, because just how you would speak to your child when they're stuck or they're in a bad place, if you speak to yourself with that same gentleness and kindness and motivation, right, and encouragement, that's really all we need. And we don't need other people to validate us and motivate us and encourage us. We need it from ourselves within first. And then once that ball starts rolling, I know for me, it just took off. And then all these wonderful things started happening. The more I invested in myself and my wellness and just even taking little time for myself that I never did before, it really compounds in the benefits. And before you know it, then manifestation is happening and your life turns around. Even if it's just your perspective, it feels like a huge, drastic change.
I had trouble with, I guess my self-worth. And I heard my daughter say something that sounded just like me, like she didn't like her body. And that moment made me think, you're perfect, because I loved her through a mother's eyes. And then I realized, I'm perfect. I had a mother once who loved me as this perfect little baby. And I started talking to myself. I still talk to myself this way now, like how I would encourage my daughter, like, good job, Hara. Good try. So sweet, just so kind. And at first it's odd and then it's not anymore. And then that's just how I talk to myself now. And I think you're so right that it does snowball and becomes second nature. And you do really have to talk to yourself the way you would somebody you love.
I think that what we think becomes what we say, and what we say becomes what we believe. That's how our brain works. So you're just showing that example, right? But also the other wonderful thing that happens, the more you speak to yourself in a loving way and do love yourself to a certain degree, then everybody else, you're teaching them how to love you and how much to love you.
Yes. And so when I say that I'm all alone, it's not in a negative way. It's my job to fill my tank up. It's my job to love me. It's my job to know my place. It's nobody else's job. I have to take responsibility for all the good and all the bad. And I think that's the answer for me anyway, to how to not have fear, because it's up to me. I can't wait for anybody, even though I'm surrounded by people I love and who love me.
And when you're that authentic and honest about yourself, there is nothing to fear.
Right.
It's take me or leave me. I moved to a small town when I was in 7th grade. So what is that, like, I think 13 years old, from a small town to an even smaller town that had one middle school. And I went from a school where it's junior high to middle school. So 7th grade was the middle of the road, right? And these classes were already established. These cliques were already established. And so I'm the new girl in a very small town. And what ended up being the, I guess, mean girls, the popular girls, they befriended me immediately. And I was like, okay, all right. I didn't understand the grouping, but it was fine. And they invited me to this party. And it was a harvest party, and it was one of the girls' homes and this beautiful estate. And they had the barn all decorated and a band. And I mean, you name it, right? And so it's the middle of the party and I have to use the restroom. So I go inside and I'm looking for the restroom and I'm passing the kitchen. And the girl who invited me, whose home it was, she was in there with her mom. And I overheard her say, well, Tammy's different. why doesn't she pretty like the rest of us? And I'll tell you something, her mom's response, I've never forgotten this my whole life. She said, well, Tammy will grow into her beauty. And I wanted to be a model until I heard that. And there was a part of me that I knew I looked different. I knew I didn't have what those girls had. And I knew there was a reason they treated me differently. And then so when I heard it, it wasn't that I didn't expect to hear that. It was almost like it hurt, but the mom's explanation was beautiful. And I didn't even know it at the time how beautiful it was. But I hung on to that my entire life. That was part of the motivation for me behind my transformation when I turned 50, exploring who I was and doing what I wanted. And the more I leaned into becoming who I wanted to be, and let me just share with you, part of that was I had long hair the whole time my children grew up. And I shaved it all off and I decided to do a mohawk 2 years ago. And I even did like cute little leopard design on the side. And I got some more facial piercings and I'm covered in tattoos, but I decided to tattoo my neck and my hands. You know, these, I guess, outward displays that if it were a teenager, you'd say, oh, she's rebelling. Mm-hmm. But for me, all of these things were what I found beautiful, even though they're not necessarily society's descriptor of what beauty is. Growing up, if you weren't 5'8" and 110 pounds soaking wet with long blonde hair and super light skin, you weren't considered beautiful. And the minute I changed my concept on what beauty was and just leaned into myself and what I found beautiful, I was looked at differently. People would approach me. People would call me beautiful for the first time in my life. It literally took 50 years. And all I did was embrace myself. I would do all of these things that society said would make me beautiful. And as soon as I let it go, I became more beautiful.
That's really lovely. It's choked me up, honestly.
My motivation has always been my children's children. The more I can heal myself and love myself and lean into acceptance, genetically that will dispose, right? My children are already watching it. Somebody planting that seed and they're doing their own things, right, to better themselves and their life. And that will have a domino effect on my children's children. The more we love ourselves and the more we accept ourselves, the more we accept other people. So I think as a world, that's the key, is unconditional love for yourself, which then translates to unconditional love for other people.
My favorite saying for myself is, the more I love me, the more I love you.
100%.
The more I see beauty in me, the less I'm comparing against you, and I can just see your beauty without having it to be competitive. I think the job is to love yourself, period. Fill your own love tank, get good with you, and not need any outside source. That's a real hard thing to do, and it's hard to remember, and it's hard to do the work, but it is I think the answer to a happy life.
I think that the work is tremendously hard, but if we can overcome our fear and just lean into it, it becomes so addicting. Who wouldn't be so proud of themselves? And then you're even more proud and even more proud.
I was sexually abused as a young girl, and I lost my mother when I was 18. I was a tumbleweed for most of my life and did not know a direction. And at around early 50s, I started, or maybe even mid 40s, I started to do the work. And literally, Byron Katie's the work. How have you discovered yourself? What work are you doing? How do you discover you?
Oh, there are so many different things that I've done, right? And I believe that they were all part of the process, even if at the time I didn't think so. I mean, everything from being addicted to Brene Brown's books back when she first got on the scene, like I ate it up. I mean, I couldn't get enough. And then the 4 Agreements, all the books that he and his son wrote. Traditional things such as, therapy and neurotherapy, holistic care. I treat my care holistically, meaning mind, body, spirit, all 3 aspects. So I mentioned earlier, I was involved in the church. I haven't been in some time, but I'm extremely spiritual. So spending that time in nature and with the universe, with God, whatever you call your higher spirit, meditating, having those hard conversations, spending time alone. after my divorce in 2017, I was single for 6 years and I didn't date. I really didn't even leave my house very often. I lived rurally up in the mountains and I work remotely from my home. So that was fairly easy to maintain a pretty hermit type existence. And then the pandemic happened, which really exacerbated that. And honestly, I did probably suffer a little bit during that time because I'd already been isolated so much that even though I was like, yay, now everybody gets isolation because it was more comfortable for me, it took me a while to get comfortable after the fact and to go back out into society. But during that time, it was all about self-reflection. And I threw everything against the wall. I mean, when it came to my food allergies, I addressed it. If it came to childhood trauma, I addressed it. There was one point not that long ago, I suffered 2 traumatic brain injuries back to back within a few weeks of each other. And I lost a lot of my memory. I am very fit. I take my wellness seriously. And during that time, I was healing a broken back that I experienced because of roller derby. In 2012, I hurt my spine in several areas and spent about 10 years recovering from that. So I had to address that every day. And that included therapy in a hot tub, stretching so that I could walk.
Mm-hmm.
That did lead to that meditation time because what I found was my hot tub outside in nature was the perfect place for me to also speak with God and speak with myself, my inner self, my childish self. And I really learned a lot during that time. So those are some of the things I've done. Also, giving back. I think serving really gets you out of your own head.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I found that I worked with other people, the better my mood was. And that really happened more for me when I started having a social media presence. I had no idea how many people would reach out to me. I had no idea that just showing people a glimpse into my life would help motivate them. And one time last year, I broke 2 toes back to back. I have osteoporosis, so I break bones pretty frequently and I couldn't skate. So I posted a little content about that. And then last summer, I had a lupus flare up. I struggle with lupus. I've actually lost 3 family members due to lupus complications. And I just recently started having my own complications. And I didn't want to post about it, but then I did a little piece, just something really quick because people were saying, where are you? Oh my gosh, those 2 posts, which are the only 2 posts I've ever made about my struggles, brought so many people to me. It was so encouraging because I realized I'm encouraging them.
Mm-hmm.
One of my followers is in the hospital more often than not and couldn't believe that I struggle with the same disease he's struggling with. And just asking the things that I'm doing, how do I motivate myself and being encouragement to him, it keeps me wanting to continue doing this.
Do you think sharing your story helps people not be ashamed to share theirs? When we have our secrets, that's where shame lives.
Yes.
And so by you sharing that you have these struggles, then other people feel connected in a way.
I think so. And there's really no reason to feel shame.
Right.
We all have struggles. Even the people that are really shiny and you never hear about it, they do too. Once we realize that we're all just humans and we all have the same struggles, even though they have a different mask or a different title or label, they affect us all the same.
I like that you went from almost hermit to content creator, from homebound to putting yourself out there so much.
It's a dichotomy, isn't it? I think that's interesting as well. And some of my favorite content creators or influencers, when I got to know them, I found out they were introverted as well.
Oh, interesting.
And technically, I think I'm kind of on the border. I'm just as introverted as I am extroverted, but I do prefer my alone time and my quiet time and my privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is very interesting. And when I do lives, I struggle. I feel very much like I'm on stage. However, my entire life, I have leaned into the things that cause me discomfort. When I was in school, I was a thespian. I was on stage and there were times where I would literally be nauseous and run to the bathroom with nausea beforehand. That's kind of how I've treated my life, is if it makes you uncomfortable, just go for it. Yesterday, I ran my first run ever. And my training consisted of 1 week of running 1 mile to 1.25 miles each day. And yesterday I didn't run all 5 miles, but I did run the majority of them. I think we were in the top 10.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was amazing. It was so uncomfortable. And I was so scared. And I thought, what are you doing? You didn't even prepare for this, but I'm fine. I walked in here today with high heels on.
I don't think you have to prepare for everything. I do this, obviously. I throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks all the time. And that is one way of going about life. And it might not work for everybody. Some people are planners, but I don't think everything has to be planned out. And I think you can just try new things and see what feels good.
I think it's so much more fun to do it that way. Let's just try a little bit of everything.
For those people that are struggling because all their ducks aren't in a row, do it anyway.
Do it anyways, because you might not have all your ducks in a row. And who cares? So much brilliance and beauty has been created out of ducks being chaotic and scattered all over. I mean, that's beauty in itself.
Thanks for listening. New episodes drop every Thursday.